Well, let's get more now on the election of Hassan Rouhani as Iran's new president. Iran analyst and author Nader Hashemi is joining us live from Toronto. Nader Hashemi, this is a resounding win for Hassan Rouhani. What's your assessment of the result, and can this election really be seen as free and fair?
Well, I think it's a victory for the people of Iran. This election was not free and not fair. In fact, it was the unfreest and unfairest election in the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So given the very narrow choice that the people had, many of them had doubts as to whether they should even legitimize this electoral process. But in the last few days of the election, they decided to cast a ballot for the one candidate that the Iranian establishment despised the most, Mr. Hassan Rouhani. And so I think they sent a very clear message both to the regime that rules over them. They sent a message to the world that they want serious and significant political change, and that they're willing to take advantage of even small opportunities to press forward with their democratic agenda.
You say this was the least free and fair election. Why was that?
Well, because you know, the Iranian regime was very fearful of a repeat of what happened 4 years ago. Iran has an authoritarian regime, and it's fearful of its own people, like most authoritarian regimes. And so the regime had to sort of play a very difficult game. They were really caught between a rock and a hard place. They really wanted, I think, a candidate who was a loyalist and a devotee of the supreme leader to win, but at the same time they wanted a huge electoral turnout to score a propaganda victory and send a message to the West that, you know, Iran is the Iranian regime is unlike you know, Mubarak in Egypt and Ben Ali in Tunisia. They do have popular support, so they needed to encourage some and provided opportunity for people to come out and vote, and so they had to provide some range of debate. It was a very narrow debate. If you compare this election with previous elections, the choice was very narrow, but nonetheless, despite the choice between bad and worse, they chose bad, and they're hoping to take advantage of this.
As you say, Rouhani campaigned on a reformist platform, so what do we expect to see reformed? What's likely to change, and can he change anything, given the power of the Guardian Council and the Supreme Leader?
No, I think that's correct. The opportunities for significant and qualitative change in terms of Iran's foreign policy, but also in domestic policy, is quite limited. I mean, I would remind the viewers that we've in many ways seen this film before. I mean, 16 years ago, Mohammad Khatami was elected on a similar platform. There was a lot of excitement, and despite his sincere efforts to reform and transform Iran and change its domestic and foreign policy, there wasn't significant change, and there was a lot of rollback, largely because of the fact that in Iran today, we still have a deeply fascistic sort of element that is in control of the state, and that is willing to exert a lot of energy and to spill a lot of blood, if necessary, to prevent meaningful political change. So I think that's the fundamental challenge that Rouhani and the reform movement and the Green movement have in Iran today.
Let me get a final thought from you, Nader Hashemi. I mean, in terms of international relations, Rouhani's quoted as saying there'll be no surrender to Western demands over Iran's nuclear program, yet he's pledged better engagement with Western powers. That's slightly duplicitous, though, isn't it?
No, it's not, because, you know, Iran has its own sort of national interest that it wants to pursue with respect to its nuclear program. If the West is thinking that someone like Rouhani or anyone who has credibility in Iran is simply going to sort of give up Iran's sort of right to enrich and pursue nuclear technology within the framework of international law, well, then they're mistaken. So I think he's playing to the Iranian nationalist sort of sentiment on this issue. But at the same time, he's also someone who wants to diffuse international tensions, and he's hoping that perhaps he can, you know, strike a bargain, strike a middle position. But of course, at the end of the day, we have to remember it's not Rouhani's decision to make. It's the office of the Supreme Leader who makes those big decisions.
Yeah, Nader Hashemi, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.